more active every day. Many points of the front line are witnessing fierce clashes, but the latest developments in this report are not from the battlefield. There are quite remarkable developments within Russia's borders. Recent developments show that Russia, which is struggling with many problems on the front line, will have even more problems. Since the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there have been many events that have frightened and terrified the Russian state. These include assassinations, bombings, and fires. The Russian occupation forces' idea that the war would only take place on the front lines was nothing more than an expectation. The spread of the war to Russia frightens all occupiers. Russia was shaken by the development in Bryansk in southern Russia the other day. Russia, which suffered huge losses on the front line, started to suffer heavy losses in regions far from the war. We know that the Ukrainian army has been targeting the Russian army supplies, cutting off shipments to the front line. With the latest attack in Bryansk, a new one has been added to cut the supply lines. Let's take a look at the latest developments. Bryansk Oblast is located in the border region with Ukraine in the south of Russia. In the city of Yunevsky here, a big explosion occurred recently on the train track, which is a very important supply line. The bomb exploded with a huge rumble when the moving train came into contact with the bomb. With the effect of the explosion, the train left the tracks and started to burn. It is estimated that the moving train was loaded to provide the necessary equipment to Russian soldiers in the region. This train is also used for the transportation of military personnel. With this incident, shipment work on Russia's main supply lines will be greatly disrupted. Information about the incident was shared by Bryansk Governor Alexander Bogomaz with a statement on the Telegram channel. Bogomaz said that a train in the Bryansk-Unesha railway in the eastern Yunevsky district derailed and caught fire after hitting an explosive placed on the tracks. Bogomaz said in a statement that the explosion occurred at the 136th kilometer between Bryansk and Unesha. It was also reported that there were no fatalities as a result of the explosion. Stating that the fire was brought under control with the intervention of fire brigades, Bogomaz concluded his statements with the following words. As a result of the incident, 2 locomotives and 7 wagons derailed. The rest of the cars were driven to a safe distance. There were no casualties. Such incidents in Russia often remain unsolved. The mystery behind the incidents led to more allegations. The inability to identify the people behind the incidences causes panic to grow even more. The perpetrators behind the explosion on the railroad tracks have also not been identified. Neither the Russian nor the Ukrainian authorities have commented on the matter. Transportation on the railway was suspended after the explosion. The company responsible for the railroad operation also reported that the attack took place at 10:17 a.m. and that the investigation is ongoing. Another reason that makes the explosion important is the region where the explosion took place. Bryansk Oblast is Ukraine's northern border neighbor. Russian experts speaking on Russian television channels recently warned Putin about the possibility of the Ukrainian army invading Bryansk. The region also borders Belarus, one of Russia's satellite states. Therefore, the Bryansk region and the explosion is a very critical detail. Social media was amash with images of the incident. The images were watched by millions of users. In the images, it is seen that the train overturned with the effect of the explosion and the materials inside burned. When we look at the size of the fire, we can conclude that petroleum-derived flammable materials were being transported inside the train. The timing of this scandalous development is also quite remarkable. The possibility that this incident, which took place in the days when the allegations that Ukraine would launch a counterattack increased considerably, may be linked to the Ukrainian offensive is being discussed. Therefore, Ukrainian partisan groups are seen as the perpetrators of the incident. So, are Ukrainian partisan groups the perpetrators of this attack? We often hear the names of 2 groups in the aftermath of incidents within Russia: Ukrainian partisan groups and Russia's against the occupation. These groups often take ownership of the attacks that they carry out and put on a show. What is surprising in this case is that no group claimed ownership of this attack so far. The attack in Bryansk is a very frightening loss for the Russian army. As you know, Russian troops are suffering huge casualties on the front line. and this railroad line was very important for the elimination of these casualties. With the railroad line, Russia was sending reinforcements, ammunition, and humanitarian needs to its soldiers on the front line. The situation of Russian soldiers on the front line will become more difficult in the coming days. The losses of the Russian army are increasing more and more. Intelligence reports from the United States of America also confirm this situation. According to these reports, the losses of the Russian army, especially on the Bakhmut line, are quite large. According to these reports, a total of 100,000 Russian soldiers, including dead and wounded, have been affected only on the Bakhmut line in the last 5 months. While Russian soldiers are dealing with major problems on the front line, Russian leader Putin, who should strive to solve these problems, is causing more problems. This idea of Putin, who signed a scandalous decision to solve the loss of military personnel and enlisted prisoners with the promise of freedom, turned out to be quite unsuccessful. Prisoners who had been released from prison and joined the army joined Wagner's ranks to fight against the Ukrainian troops. But this turned out to be more of a problem than a solution. These prisoners have no combat experience. Therefore, they became a burden for professional soldiers. In addition, the prisoners who left the war by fulfilling their commitment to fight for 6 months turned into a major security problem within Russia. One of the prisoners, who was freed after fulfilling his duties at the front, recently committed murder in Russia. While the Russian occupation continues, the Ukrainian army continues its resistance with the same determination as the first day. Ukrainian leader Zelensky's belief in victory encourages the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people. This directly affects the fate of the war. On many fronts, Ukrainian troops are very close to achieving great victories with this belief. The absence of a harmonious system between Ukrainians' leader, people, and army in Russia is bringing Russia closer to defeat day by day. It is a matter of curiosity what kind of strategy Russian leader Putin will follow against the offensive that Ukraine will launch. Considering the losses of the Russian army, it does not seem possible for the Russian army to resist Ukraine's large-scale attack. According to the latest data, the losses of the Russian army are as follows: 192,590 military personnel, 3,707 tanks, 7,216 armored combat vehicles, 2,962 artillery systems, 547 reactive spread-fire systems, 304 air defense systems, 308 aircraft, 294 helicopters, 5,886 automotive and tank equipment, 18 military ships and boats, 947 cruise missiles, 2,523 unmanned area vehicles, and 370 special machines. Do you think the Russian army has a chance to counter the Ukrainian offensive? Who was behind the railroad attack? What could be Putin's next move?